You know that feeling you get when something just doesn't sit right? That quiet discomfort in your chest when she says she's going out again and you tell yourself you're just being paranoid. Here's what I need you to understand right now. Your intuition isn't your enemy. It's not insecurity talking. Sometimes it's your subconscious picking up on patterns. Your conscious mind hasn't fully processed yet, and by the end of this conversation, you're going to understand exactly what those patterns are and more importantly, what they actually mean. About your relationship. Before we go any further, if you are someone who values understanding human behavior at a deeper level, especially when it comes to relationships, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe because we are going to be talking about things most people are too uncomfortable to address, honestly, the kind of insights that can genuinely change how you navigate your relationships. Let me be clear about something from the start. This isn't about controlling anyone. It's not about telling you to monitor your partner's every move or become suspicious of normal social behavior. Women deserve to have friendships, to go out, to have lives outside of relationships. That's healthy, that's normal, that's essential. But there's a difference between healthy independence and patterns that signal deeper issues in a relationship. And understanding that difference requires you to be honest with yourself about what you are actually observing. The reason this topic creates so much anxiety for men is because you've been given two completely contradictory messages your entire life. On one hand, you're told to trust completely, to never question, to see any concern as insecurity. On the other hand, you've watched relationships around you fall apart, heard stories, maybe even experienced betrayal yourself. So you are stuck in this impossible position where your instincts are screaming at you, but you've been conditioned to ignore them because acknowledging them feels like admitting you're controlling or insecure. Here's what I want you to understand. There's a massive difference between toxic jealousy and legitimate concern based on observable changes in behavior. Toxic jealousy is about your own insecurities, being projected onto a partner who's done nothing wrong. It's irrational, it's controlling, and it damages healthy relationships. But recognizing genuine behavioral shifts, especially when they cluster together into patterns, that's not insecurity, that's awareness. And awareness is what protects you from wasting years of your life in a relationship that's already over. The challenge is that most men have never been taught how to distinguish between the two. You've never been given a framework for understanding what normal relationship dynamics look like versus what deteriorating trust actually looks like. So you end up in this constant state of second-guessing yourself. Is this normal? Am I overreacting? Am I being unreasonable? And that uncertainty eats away at you far more than clarity ever could. What we are going to explore together isn't about creating paranoia. It's about giving you a clear, psychologically grounded understanding of human behavior in relationships, because here's the truth that nobody wants to say out loud. When someone is emotionally or physically stepping outside of a relationship, their behavior changes. It has to, not because they're necessarily trying to deceive you, but because they're now managing two different emotional realities. And managing two realities creates patterns, predictable patterns, and those patterns are what we're going to examine. Let's start with something that might seem obvious on the surface, but becomes more complex when you really examine it. The first pattern to understand is what I call the frequency shift combined with emotional detachment from you during the planning phase. Now, everyone goes out with friends. That's normal. Healthy relationships include independent social lives, but here's what changes when something else is happening beneath the surface. When a woman is genuinely just maintaining her friendships and enjoying her social life, there's a transparency to it. She mentions it casually throughout the week. You know who she's seeing, where they're probably going, and it feels integrated into the normal flow of your conversations. There's no weird energy around it. She might even invite you occasionally, or at minimum, there's an openness where you could join if the situation made sense. The key is that her social life doesn't feel like a separate, guarded territory. But watch what happens when the dynamic shifts. Suddenly, these outings become more frequent. Yes, but it's the energy around them that really changes. There's a defensiveness. Before you've even expressed concern, you might simply ask what she's doing Friday night, and instead of a casual answer, you get an edge in her voice. Something that sounds like she's already prepared for an argument you haven't started. That's your first signal that something in her internal emotional landscape has changed. She might start mentioning these plans last minute, even though, from years of understanding how women operate with their friends, that these things get planned days in advance. Women coordinate schedules, they discuss outfits, they plan meeting times and locations. It's not spontaneous in the way she's suddenly presenting it to you. So when she's acting like everything just came together that afternoon, what she's really doing is limiting the amount of time you have to process it, ask questions, or be part of the emotional preparation for her night out. And here's the subtle part that most men miss. It's not just that she's going out more, it's that she seems emotionally lighter, more energized, more alive when she's preparing to leave than she's been with you in weeks. You're sitting there watching her get ready, and you can feel this electricity coming off of her that you haven't seen directed towards you in a long time. She's doing her makeup with more care. She's trying on multiple outfits. She's checking her phone with this little smile, and all of that energy, all of that excitement, it's flowing in a direction that doesn't include you. Now, I need you to hear this carefully. This alone doesn't mean infidelity, but it does mean something significant. It means her emotional investment is shifting. Her anticipation, her joy, her sense of aliveness is increasingly connected to spaces and people outside of your relationship. And that shift, that redirection of emotional energy, that's what creates the vulnerability for boundaries to be crossed. The second pattern is what I call the phone protection escalation, and this one operates on layers that go deeper than most men realize. Let me walk you through what normal phone behavior looks like versus what happens when someone is actively managing a secret emotional or physical connection. In a healthy relationship where both people trust each other, phones are just tools. They're not treated like classified documents. She might leave her phone on the counter while she showers. You might grab it to check the time or change the music without even thinking about it. There's no voltage around the device because there's nothing to hide. It's neutral. But when something changes, the phone transforms from a tool into a guardian of secrets, and her relationship with that device shifts in very specific ways. First, it becomes a physical extension of her body. It's always within arm's reach. When she goes to the bathroom, it goes with her. When she's cooking dinner, it's on the counter next to her. When you are watching something together, it's face down on her lap or tucked under her leg. This isn't about occasional privacy. This is about a constant, vigilant awareness of where that phone is and who has access to it. And that level of protection only exists when there's something being protected. But here's where it gets more psychologically revealing. Watch what happens when you get physically close to the phone, even accidentally. You reach for something on the table near where it's sitting, and her eyes track your hand. There's a subtle body tension. Maybe she casually moves and it makes some light comment about needing to check something, but really she's just repositioning it away from you. These aren't conscious, calculated moves. Most of the time, they're reflexive, protective behaviors that emerge when someone is managing hidden communication. Then there's the timing of her phone engagement. Notice when she's most active on it. If you see her constantly checking it throughout the evening when she's with you, barely looking up from the screen. But then when you ask who she's talking to, suddenly it's just boring group chat stuff or work emails. Your intuition is picking up on a mismatch because here's what actually happens with normal mundane communication. You engage with it when you have a moment, respond when it's convenient, but it doesn't create this magnetic pull where you can't stay present with the person in front of you. What you are witnessing is someone who's emotionally engaged in a conversation that's giving her something she's not getting from you. That dopamine hit of new attention, that flutter of excitement from flirting, that feeling of being seen and desired by someone who doesn't know all her flaws and frustrations yet. And that pull is stronger than her motivation to be present with you in that moment. That's not about the device, that's about where her emotional energy's flowing. And then watch what happens when she goes out with her friends. Suddenly, the phone that was glued to her hand all week becomes mysteriously silent. You text her something simple, maybe just asking if she's having fun, and hours pass, no response. Or you get these weirdly delayed, brief replies that feel obligatory. Meanwhile, you know that phone is in her hand. You know she's seeing your messages, but responding to you would require her to shift her attention away from wherever it actually is in that moment, and she doesn't want to do that. So you get breadcrumbs instead of presence. The third pattern is something I call appearance investment redirection, and this is where you need to pay attention, not just to what's changing, but to where that change is being directed. Women naturally care about how they look. That's not the issue. The issue is when there's a sudden shift in effort that doesn't correlate with the time she's spending with you. Think about the beginning of your relationship. She put effort into how she looked when she was going to see you, right? That's normal. That's part of attraction and wanting to be desired by the person you are choosing to be with. But as relationships mature, comfort sets in. She's not doing a full face of makeup to sit on the couch with you on a Tuesday night, and that's actually healthy. It means she feels safe enough to be her authentic self around you. The problem emerges when you notice that comfort with you is increasing, while effort for other contexts is suddenly escalating. She's going out with her friends and she's spending 2 hours getting ready. Hair, makeup, outfit, changes the works. She looks incredible. You tell her she looks beautiful, and maybe there's a brief smile. But there's no real warmth in receiving that compliment from you. It doesn't land the way it used to, and that's because the effort wasn't for you. You are just someone witnessing the preparation for a performance. You are not part of the validation. She's seeking the eyes she wants on her, they're somewhere else. Now, here's what makes this particularly revealing. Ask yourself, when was the last time she put that level of effort into an evening with you? When did she last spend significant time on her appearance for a date night, for an intimate moment, for quality time together? If the answer is that she doesn't, or that the disparity is massive, you are looking at a reallocation of effort that tells you exactly where her desire to be seen and wanted is focused, and it's not focused on you. Let's add another layer to this. Pay attention to the style choices she's making for these nights out. Is she dressing differently than she used to? Maybe more revealing, more attention, seeking more in line with attracting new interest rather than just looking nice for friends. She's known for years. Women dress for their audience. When the audience is genuinely just close girlfriends in a familiar setting, the effort is there, but it's different. It's more about feeling confident in the group, but when there's a possibility of male attention, she's interested in receiving the choices. Shift lower necklines tighter, fits more skin, more effort into looking sexually attractive rather than just put together. And here's the psychological piece that's crucial. When you notice this and mention it even gently, watch her response. Does she get defensive immediately? Does she accuse you of being controlling or insecure? Does she make you feel like you are the problem for even noticing? Because here's what that defensiveness is really about. She knows on some level that her behavior doesn't align with someone who's fully invested in their relationship. And rather than being honest about that, it's easier to make you question your own perception. It's easier to paint you as the insecure, jealous partner than to examine why she's investing so much energy into attracting attention outside of the relationship. And there's also the fragrance component. If she's suddenly wearing perfume every time she goes out, especially a different one than she wears around you, or if she never wears it for you anymore but always wears it for these nights out, that's sensory signaling. Scent is one of the most intimate and memory-forming senses. Choosing a particular fragrance for particular contexts is about creating associations. And if those associations are being built outside your relationship, that tells you something significant about her intentions. The fourth pattern is what I call strategic vagueness, and this is where communication becomes deliberately unclear in ways that give her maximum flexibility and minimum accountability. When someone is being honest about their evening details come naturally. They're not something to manage or control, but when there's something to hide, even if it's just emotional infidelity or the possibility of it, vagueness becomes a protective tool. Listen to how she describes her plans instead of saying she's meeting Sarah and Jennifer at that wine bar downtown at 8. You get something like just going out with the girls. No names, no location, no timeline. And if you ask for specifics, not because you're interrogating her, but because you're genuinely interested in her life, you hit resistance. She acts like you're being invasive for asking basic questions. That would be normal in any close relationship. Then watch what happens when she comes home. You ask how her night was and you get surface level responses. It was fun. It was good. We went to a few places. Nothing specific, nothing memorable enough to share. And here's the thing, when women actually have enjoyable nights with their friends, they usually want to share details. They'll tell you the funny thing that happened, the drama. Someone shared the interesting conversation, they want to connect with you about their experience. But when she's being vague, it's because providing details creates risk. Details can be checked. Details can reveal inconsistencies. Vagueness keeps her safe, and if you ever try to verify anything even casually, maybe you mention running into one of her friends and bringing up that night, watch how quickly she panics or gets angry because vagueness only works when it's never challenged. The moment you introduce any accountability, any way of cross-referencing her story, the whole protective structure falls apart. And her reaction to that possibility tells you everything about whether she's protecting innocent privacy or hiding something she knows would hurt you. The fifth pattern is emotional distance that intensifies after these nights out, and this one cuts deep because it's where you feel the loss most directly. You'd think that if she just had a fun, innocent night with friends, she'd come home in a good mood, maybe even more connected to you, more appreciative of the relationship. But instead, there's this coldness, this withdrawal, like she's somewhere else. Even when she's physically next to you, she comes home and there's no warmth, no desire to reconnect, no interest in physical intimacy. She might go straight to bed, or she's on her phone again, or she's suddenly exhausted and doesn't want to talk, and you are left feeling like a roommate rather than a partner, like someone she coexists with rather than someone she actually wants to be close to. That emotional absence. That's not about being tired from a night out. That's about guilt or about her emotional energy being invested somewhere else. Here's the part that really reveals what's happening in the days following these nights out. Notice if she becomes more critical of you, more irritable, more likely to pick fights over small things. And this isn't random. This is cognitive dissonance playing out. If she's developing feelings for someone else, or if she crossed a boundary she knows she shouldn't have, she needs to justify it to herself. And the easiest way to do that is to focus on your flaws. To build a narrative in her mind where you are not meeting her needs, where the relationship isn't working, where whatever she's doing is somehow understandable given how you failed her. So she starts noticing everything you do wrong. The way you chew, how you don't help enough, that thing you said 3 weeks ago, suddenly you can't do anything, right? And what she's really doing is constructing permission for herself to continue moving away from you emotionally. The sixth pattern is behavioral overcompensation, and this is where things get confusing because the signals seem contradictory. Sometimes when guilt sets in or when she's trying to manage her own internal conflicts, she'll suddenly become overly affectionate or attentive in ways that feel performative rather than genuine. She might initiate sex out of nowhere after weeks of distance. She might be extra sweet, extra complimentary, buy you something unexpected, and your first instinct is relief. Finally, things are getting better, but here's what's actually happening. She's managing her guilt, or she's testing herself to see if she still feels something for you, or she's creating cover so that if you ever had concerns, she can point to these moments as proof that everything was fine. The seventh and final pattern, the one that ties everything together, is friend group transformation and secretiveness about who's actually there. Pay attention to whether her friend group has suddenly expanded to include people you've never met, people she's vague about, or whether these nights out increasingly involve mixed groups rather than just her close girlfriends when she says she's going out with the girls. But you later find out guys were there too, and she never mentioned it, that a mission is deliberate. She knows that information would make you uncomfortable, and instead of being transparent, she chose to hide it. Here's what I need you to understand as we close this. These patterns, especially when they cluster together, they're not about one bad night or one moment of poor judgment. They're about a fundamental shift in where her emotional and physical energy is directed. And you cannot fix a relationship where someone has already emotionally left. And what you can do is see the situation clearly. Trust what you are observing and make decisions that protect your dignity and your future. You deserve someone whose excitement, whose effort, whose loyalty is directed toward building something with you, not away from you.